On this episode of Untitled, we're going to be talking about Charley Harper. Charley Harper was a West Virginia artist, but no one seems to know that he was a West Virginia artist.
Charley Harper is one of our absolute favorites. He was born in 1922 in Frenchton, West Virginia, which is right outside of Buchanan. He was born and raised here. I believe he went to Wesleyan before he joined the service, got married, moved to Ohio, and spent the rest of his life over there. So Ohio kind of claims him, but he was born and raised right here in good old West Virginia. After Charley Harper moved to Ohio and finished art school, one of his first jobs was as an illustrator for Ford Times, which was a little magazine that the Ford Motor Company put out at actually two different times in history. But when Charley worked there, he did a lot of illustrations for them about travel and kind of the American way of life. And they're fascinating little illustrations done in his style, but using a lot more people, which he wasn't known for in his later life. But we were lucky enough to find some of those copies of the Ford Times in the Teays Valley Restore and see some of that work in person that he had done for the magazine.
And speaking of in person, we also traveled to Cincinnati to look at one of his large-scale mosaic tile pieces in the Federal Building in downtown Cincinnati. That was really quite a piece.
That was so beautiful. It was just a very large mosaic mural, like Shawn said, of all different animals. There were probably maybe 100 different animals on there. And again, just the way he was able to represent them in that minimal realism is just fascinating. You know, using tiny little, what were those, 1x1 mosaic tiles to create 100 different creatures is just a true skill.
One of the things about Charley Harper's art is if you were looking at it today, you would guarantee that it is created on a computer because it's so precise, so geometric. The colors are so vivid and uniform. The lines are so crisp on them. It just seems to be computer generated, but it certainly wasn't, was it?
No, it definitely wasn't. It was well before computers. He called his style minimal realism, which is a perfect description of what he does. He's obviously capturing the real aspects of animals and nature and people, but it's in a very minimalistic and highly stylized form. He did do a lot of animals and plants as well, a lot of nature. And because of that, the National Park Service commissioned him to do, I believe it was 10 different posters representing 10 of the national parks. And you can see those online. They're fantastic. They just really capture the nature and the wildlife in those particular parks.
One of the pieces that we have in the Lafayette Flats art collection is a print of one of his paintings called Welcome to My Website.
In that print, you can see that he has drawn a spider in a web that has collected all kinds of various little bugs and critters. But that title, Welcome to My Website, is a good example of how clever he was with all of his titles. One of my favorite things about Charley Harper is just going through and reading the titles that he gave to all of his pieces. They're just so clever, funny, and often contain really good puns.
This piece that we have a print of at Lafayette Flats is called Cardinals Consorting. I've noticed a lot of cardinals in Charley Harper's work. Of course, we're drawn to it because it's the state bird of West Virginia, but it was also the state bird of a lot of other of our surrounding states, and I think that might have been part of the reason that he used it so much. This one, you can see the cardinals, the male cardinal, the female cardinal, and they're sitting on a buckeye leaf. So you can imagine that this is a hat tip to his adopted home state in Ohio.
Speaking of hat tips, we have a lot of little nods to Charley Harper throughout Lafayette Flats besides the prints. We have some of his bird decals in Core 10, flat number 2. And one of my favorite things is the wooden woodpecker sculpture we have done in his style that is on the stairwell going up to the 3rd floor at Lafayette Flats.
And so that'll do it for this episode of Untitled. We were thrilled to be able to bring you some more information about Charley Harper and share a little bit more about this great West Virginia artist's work.